Hi everyone. I wanted to tell you about my fantastic experience overall with Lithia Ford of Roseburg and why that was so much better than the comparative horrible experiences, relatively speaking, that I have had at other dealerships in the past years. So I would like to lay out a list of things that I appreciated and then set those up as a contrast. And hopefully this will be interesting, at least a little bit, and give you an idea of what to look out for, and also to help you be aware of some things so that you can make an informed decision the next time you go to a car dealership. So there are great ones out there. There are also not so great ones. That's not news to most people, but I wanted to share my own experiences, and that way it will be one more thing that you can use to your positive advantage. All right. So number one, they listened to me. So two very big things for me were to be able to place the order for the exact vehicle, in my case, my 2024 Ford Maverick XL with the all-wheel drive and the 2-liter EcoBoost, and of course that's part of the all-wheel drive setup, and all the other options that I had chosen and so forth. I wanted that, but I wanted to be able to place that order without having to drive down to the other part of the county to my Ford dealership and basically just sign some papers and say this is what I want and then come all the way back home. Not that it's terribly far, but I thought that seems pointless if all we're doing is putting in an order. I was willing to do whatever I needed to do online and get that done. I had a lot of things going on and busy schedule like many people do, and I needed somebody who would just get that done, place the order, and then I could just start waiting for the vehicle to be built. And so again, to reemphasize, I needed somebody who would place the order for me from the convenience of my home and get exactly what I wanted. Well, guess what? Lithia Ford were able to work with me, and between everybody who helped out, I was able to get just that. I was able to get the order placed without even setting my foot in the dealership until 9 months later when the truck was delivered. And not only that, but I didn't have to put a penny down for that order, as I mentioned in one of my other videos. And it was exactly what I wanted. It wasn't like, well, you have to get this if you really want it, or you have to do it that way, or you have to pay some extra, or whatever. Nope, exactly what I wanted. So they listened to me. That's number one. In contrast, I once went to a Subaru dealership in Washington State, and I wanted a specific Subaru WRX at the time, and I wanted a specific color. I hadn't chosen lots and lots of options, but I wanted a certain exhaust on it that was one of the options or accessories. I wanted a certain color, and like I feel like one or two other things. That's what I wanted, and I was willing to wait if it needed to be ordered. So I went down to that Subaru dealer. They had one that was completely different color, different exhaust, and I let them know how I wanted to order one to get what I wanted. And I was willing to wait and so forth. I was trading in a vehicle. At that time, it was a 370Z that I was trading in. And we went on the test drive and so forth, and get back to the dealership, and I was ready to start working toward placing that order. And they were basically pushing me to get that car and said, all right, so we can go ahead and install the exhaust for you. It'll cost this amount and all of this. And I'm like, well, no, that's not the one I wanted. I didn't want that color. I didn't want to remove the exhaust that was already on the car and then have you put on a different one and all of that. No, I wanted to get it the way I wanted to begin with. Well, then they proceeded to tell me, well, okay, if we do that, then your trade in, we're only offering you this amount for the trade in, which at that time it was way under what the Kelley Blue Book value was for the trade in based on the condition of the 370Z, which was very nice condition. And I wasn't expecting them to give me, the kind of trade in as if it was absolutely perfect mint condition. It wasn't, but it was very well taken care of, very low mileage, regular maintenance, all of that. And nope, they were not willing to do that. In fact, they said by the time the order comes in a few months or whatever, then we may give you, in other words, considerably less. So in other words, if you want this, you're going to need to accept our low offer, essentially is what it boiled down to, for your 370Z, for your trade-in, and just be willing to take what we have here. Otherwise, you're stuck probably getting even less than this offer, and at least a high likelihood of that. And then we can see about doing an order. It seemed like it wasn't even something they were willing to fully look into for me. So needless to say, I absolutely did not want to go that route, and I ended up getting a Subaru Forester 2.0 XT with essentially the same engine as the WRX. Anyway, I ended up being very happy with that. So that was good. But there was a whole other side story to that. But in any case, that's an example of somebody not listening to what was important to me and trying to shove their own idea on me. So, big contrast, as you can tell. All right. The next thing that was important to me is to have the vehicle in good condition, to have it cared for properly. And I realize there's a lot of details that are involved with transporting a vehicle from point A to point B and so forth. But even when it's a brand new vehicle that has been delivered, special ordered, etc., there are risks that are involved. Well, thankfully, the vehicle was well cared for, the Ford Maverick at Lithia Ford of Roseburg, and I'm very pleased with the way it was treated, the condition, and so forth. Contrast that to a dealership up in Washington State. Now, I will reference Washington State because that's where I lived most of my life. I am now down in Oregon. But in any case, that dealership in Washington State where I purchased a Dodge Charger SRT8, it was a new Dodge Charger SRT8 back in 2007. Brand new vehicle, most expensive vehicle I have ever purchased, and there were many things that I discovered that were not in good condition. I mean, I don't expect any vehicle to be 100% absolute flawless. I mean, there's nothing perfect in this world. But there were some glaring issues with it. Sadly, some of them I didn't even discover until after I'd owned it for a short period of time. So, one was the bezel around the like HVAC controls and so forth. It looked like it had been either slightly mangled by something or else it had some sort of major defect while it was being installed. So it wasn't a huge issue, but it looked like there was a crease in the plastic and almost looked like if somebody tried to pry it in place or pry it out of place, something unusual. I'm not sure what was up when that was either assembled or somebody was test driving it, and I don't know what, but very unusual. And again, this is a brand new vehicle. Yes, they had it on the lot for a number of months, but it was a brand new vehicle. Also, there was like I think just a manufacturing imperfection with the bezel around the speedometer, kind of a silver color, but it was like it wasn't fully painted. So that was just kind of haphazard. Now, part of that could have been from the manufacturer, part of that could have been rough handling at the dealership as far as the bezel around the HVAC controls, but also that did not have push to start. So around the key, you could see where people had kind of scratched it up with the key as they were trying to put it into the keyhole in the ignition. Also, I discovered that underneath the like chin spoiler of the like the front fascia of the Dodge Charger, you could see where somebody had gone over a steeper driveway or something like that and it had scraped. Now, I was extremely careful myself, extremely careful. And so I can essentially guarantee that that was not me, especially since I discovered it so early on in my ownership. But I mean, who thinks to look underneath a vehicle when you're buying a new one? I mean, that's good advice, I would say. But back then, that was only the second new car I had ever purchased, and I thought, well, goodness, this is the most expensive car by far I've ever purchased at the time, and still to this day, the most expensive I've ever purchased. I thought, well, surely it's going to be in immaculate condition. Nope. It was actually the worst condition car that I've ever purchased, as far as I have ever seen or experienced. So, with that, also, after I had been driving it for a short period of time, keep in mind, I had made sure I did not park, like parallel park next to curbs. In fact, I don't know if I ever parallel parked that vehicle at all. I would park it in my work parking lot. I worked retail at the time, and there was like an island that I would park kind of near, but when I say kind of near, I'm talking like 2 feet away. So it wasn't like I was coming up nearing a curb like when you parallel park and you have to be like within a foot away from the curb or whatever to avoid a parking ticket or something like that. No, 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 no. This is where I had lots of room, like 2 feet away from that island, somewhere in there. The very closest maybe I got to the island in like when I would park on that side of the vehicle, I want to say maybe a foot and a half. So anyway, no signs of me like curbing the rim or anything like that. But after I drove it for a short period of time and washed the vehicle as I was, shining up the rim, I thought, what is this? Why does this look funny? Well, it turns out the driver's front rim was curbed. I would say about this much of the rim, you could see it had kind of dug in, almost like not just rubbed it, like you know, curb rash, but it like gouged out of that aluminum rim, like way went into it. So yeah, it wasn't enough for me to just catch it with my eye quickly walking around the vehicle. But had I inspected every rim, which I started doing with every vehicle I purchased after that, I would have been able to see that there was something up with that rim. And the fact that it was scraped under like the chin spoiler and that rim having that gouge into it makes me think that somebody was, hooning around with it and that sort of thing. So, yeah, that gives you an idea. I also suspect that there were some burnouts that were done with it. It seemed like the rear brakes, just kind of the way they were squeaking when I first started driving it, I got the feeling that it maybe hadn't been treated that well. So yeah, it wasn't fun. Now the rim, it is entirely possible that in the process of driving, that there were some rough road spots or possibly a lane divider that I got too close to, but if it gouged out the rim like that and I was driving, I would think I would feel it significantly. It was pretty soft steering, so it wasn't like you would feel every bump in the road with it, but I would think I would feel that. And the other ways that that vehicle was treated or not cared for or properly made or whatever, I'm pretty sure it was something to do with the dealer. or somebody they allowed to test drive it or something before I got to it, especially given the fact it was on the lot for a while. Anyway, I could go on. That again was my worst experience with the condition of a vehicle. So that's in contrast to having my Ford Maverick treated very well with Lithia Ford of Roseburg. All right, so that's number 2. And then I would say number 3, it kind of ties together with what I already said, but convenience. So being able to communicate online, being able to have things done in a way that didn't take a huge portion of my schedule. Yes, it was still a, a fairly long process to get all the papers signed, to go through the financing office and all those sorts of things. That was, I guess, what you could call pretty normal, but it also was not high pressure, so that was nice. And I will say there was one other dealership where the whole experience was very similar to Lithia Ford of Roseburg, and that was actually a Nissan dealership up in Washington State, where I was able to communicate online through email and so forth. I was actually getting an employee discount through my employer at the time, and that worked out really well. It was convenient, and I got a great deal. The trade-in process was really easy. I felt like everything went just about as perfectly as it could. So if I were to summarize, being listened to, having convenience, and having a vehicle properly cared for, those were my 3 big things that I really appreciate about Lithia Ford of Roseburg, plus the fact that everyone has been very friendly, great about checking in with me, not super high pressure, but more of, hey, what do you want? And then we're going to maximize off of that. And I really appreciate that. So, oh, one bonus. I will share one bonus. They have an amazing dog that is great for people who are coming in, going through the challenges that can feel very stressful of purchasing a vehicle, making a big buying decision, and you get to pet the dog if the dog is handy. So check it out if you're curious. You can look at the list of the staff pictures for Lithia Ford of Roseburg, and you'll see the dog I'm referring to. So yeah, that kind of made my day in part. So with that, I do love dogs. For anybody who doesn't know, definitely love them. So anyway, I see this video is getting a bit on the long side, but thank you all for listening, and I hope this helps at least one person in at least one way. And you all keep being awesome. Bye-bye for now.